Hi, I'm Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. This 30-minute podcast features a new author interviewed by me every single day, 365 days a year, for about 30 minutes. I am also the publisher for Zibby Books, which publishes 12 books a year in fiction and memoir. Our books are already out now. You can check it out on zibbybooks.com. And we have a magazine called Zibby Mag, where we have lots of wonderful essays and lifestyle features. That's at zibbymag.com. We have classes at zibbyclasses.com. And I recently opened a bookstore in LA called Zibby's Bookshop at 1113 Montana Avenue at 11th Street in Santa Monica. I hope that you are able to enjoy some of our other offerings, but this here podcast is the basis of all of it and started in 2018, and no matter what I do, this is basically my favorite thing. Enjoy. Miriam Landis is the author of Lauren in the Limelight. Miriam is a faculty member at the Pacific Northwest Ballet. She was a Lit Camp Fellow and an assistant editor at Simon & Schuster, Hyperion, and the Amazon Books team. A Stanford grad, she was also a student at the School of American Ballet and a professional ballerina with Miami City Ballet. When not writing, teaching, or dancing, she enjoys life on Lake Washington, near Seattle, alongside her husband and 4 children. In addition to Lauren in the Limelight, she is the author of 2 young adult novels, Girl in Motion and Girl on Pointe, previously published as Breaking Point. Welcome, Miriam. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss Lauren in the Limelight.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Zibby. I've listened to your podcast forever, so it's really amazing to be here myself.
Oh, thank you. Well, I'm always open for tips, improvements, whatever I can do from someone who listens regularly. So,
Oh my
feedback
gosh.
always welcome.
No, I love it. I'll ponder that, but no, I get so much pleasure out of it. You feel like you're really part of a community of writers and just everything you do. I mean, I feel connected to all the different arms of your organization, and I just think you do the best job. So,
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you. Okay. Lauren in the Limelight. This is your 3rd book, first middle grade. You have 2 other, all of which have beautiful ballet imagery.
Thank
You
you.
still teach ballet. Oh my gosh. Okay. Talk about this specific book, but I want to hear about your whole career and everything.
Okay. All right. Yes. So so many things I could interview you. I have so many questions for you. So this book in particular, it is my first middle grade. It centers around 3 young dancers who all live on Mercer Island, which is where I live, which is a small suburb right outside of Seattle. It's about 10 minutes across the bridge to downtown Seattle. And they go to a very small town ballet school here on Mercer Island. And the book chronicles the year that they go on pointe, which for ballet dancers, that's a really big, it's like the bat mitzvah year, you get your pointe shoes. It's a really big deal. So it follows them through that year. And during that year, they also audition for the Pacific Northwest Ballet School, which is where I've been on the faculty for 13 years. So I kind of know that spot. And they also prepare for their school's performance of Alice in Wonderland.
I love that.
So, and the book is really, I spend a lot of time with kids this age since I teach them. And I'm also a mom of 4. I have 11-year-old twins and a 6 and an 8-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
All this tree.
You're the only person I feel like I've ever met with like such a similar breakdown,
Oh my gosh. But you don't have twins, do you?
I do.
You do?
Yeah, I have 16-year-old twins and almost 9-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Zibby, you're the only person I've ever met who had twins and kept going.
There are others.
Most people they get their twins and they're like, goodbye, right? Yeah. So that's yeah. Okay. So and all 4 of them are students at Pacific Northwest Ballet School.
They're all girls?
No, there's one boy. The twins are boy girl.
Okay.
The twins are in the Nutcracker this year, which is super fun. This is their second year. So we're like the Von Trapp family dancers. It's a little cheesy right now. I'm sure we're going to outgrow it. But there's a lot of ballet. There's a lot of ballet feelings in this house.
How does your
husband has nothing?
I was going to ask how he feels.
Oh gosh, especially after this book tour, he's like, no more ballet. I mean, he's a physician, so he's just like, can we please stop? They're all acting out the Nutcracker in the living room, and we have 5 ballet schedules. It's just
my gosh. Well, my little guys are in the midst of The Little Mermaid, and we have acting class here every Tuesday with 8 kids, and like screaming, singing through the house. And, oh my gosh, it's like chaos.
And how does your husband like that?
He's always just like, okay, so it's very loud.
Right. The noise canceling headphones go on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. So in the midst of all this, you're writing, and when did you do this? But like, when did you write the book? Like,
When did I write the book?
Yeah, when did you write the book?
Okay, so the writing, all of it predates the kids, like the family, the whole thing, the ballet, like that's like goes back to, my childhood. So I can never really shake it.
Yep.
This book in particular, I wrote it during the pandemic. When you can probably relate to this. I had 4 kids at home, 24/7 on Zoom school, and it was super fun. I had to make my own fun. So I had actually been working on adult fiction for a while and trying to get an agent for a long time and getting close, but no cigar. And so I consider that sort of my big training novel. And I put it in a drawer and I was like, well, I'll just write another ballet book because I had done these. The other 2 are 20 years old. So, and then I thought about it, and here my kids are 11. Are they going to continue ballet? Is my daughter going to go? So I'm like, that's the age group I didn't get before, because that book is when they're 16 to 18. And this one, there's like 18 to 20. So I was like, oh, I missed that big year where they go on point. So kind of in a fairly short amount of time, maybe 5 months, I wrote Lauren in the Limelight. And then I spent 2 years querying it. And there's a whole backstory to the book. I mean, I'd love to talk about what's in the book, because I think that that's probably what readers are most interested in.
Yeah.
But this book has been a huge journey and actually all these books have been a huge journey, because forever the publishing industry has told me ballet is too niche. Ballet is too niche. And one of the reasons that I started writing them initially is that there is almost nothing to comp them on the shelf. So if you go to the dance section, you find children's books that are illustrated about dance. And then you find nonfiction, memoirs of famous dancers, history of the great ballets. And there's a few, middle grade, YA. But again, when I was even querying to come up with comp titles, it was like Ballet Shoes from 1970, or, there's very little. And what there is mostly not written by dancers in the way that, like, I'm so deeply enmeshed in the dance world. Like I've lived and breathed it for 45 years.
You're like the ultimate dance moms is you.
Well, that actually, I'm going to have nightmares that you said that, because I'm so not a dance mom.
I'm kidding.
No. I know, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm so in the culture that is like and I love dance moms. I mean, I love them, but I also am prickly about the stereotypes and the caricatures.
Yep.
And anybody that you talk to who's in the dance community, which the dance community is a really small, tight, it's like when you see your fellow Jews, you're like, oh, you're a fellow. Yeah, right? It's a really tight community. And I mean, I remember when the movie Center Stage came out, I was dancing in Miami City Ballet at that time. And a lot of my friends who I was at ballet school with were in that movie. And we were all like, okay, this movie's finally going to tell our story. It's finally going to show what our experience is like without sensationalizing it or caricaturing us or whatever. And I mean, I know that's a cult classic, but none of them ever quite hit the note I wanted to see, that I felt like reflected my experience and who I was authentically as a person, not just a dance stereotype or something. So these books just felt like the older ones were more like I was writing for my younger self. This one, I just want my students to feel seen, my kids to feel seen, that when I was a kid, if you saw someone like you in a book, you felt seen, you felt safe, like there was a place for you in this world. And I just have never seen characters like this in a book. And so that felt super important to me.
Wait, so delve more deeply. Go into plotting, how you found the plot, like the characters, like what you're most excited about. Like, what should everybody know about this book that they now have to run down the street, ballet dancer or not? Or maybe they have to twirl down the street.
Oh, you're so good with the pitch. Okay. Twirl down the street. Okay, so there are 3 characters in the book. There's Lauren, obviously. Lauren, all 3 kids basically represent a big lesson that they need to learn, that they learn by the end of the book. So Lauren is the dancer she's grown up in Mercer Island. It's always come easy to her. She walks into her studio. She's the best. She never has to try very hard. But her parents don't really want her to continue because financially it's expensive. The dad works in the arts and thinks it's a terrible career. And so that's Lauren. And then we have the new girl, they sort of the inciting incident at the beginning is this new girl named Serena arrives from New Jersey, and she's the best. I mean, she walks in, we've all had that experience where, you get really comfortable and then someone is way better than you. And so Serena is very talented. Her mother was a professional dancer. And so she's also sort of the most traumatized of the kids because her brother, not to spoil, but her brother had passed away. And so the family's moved sort of because of that. And her mom wants her to dance, is taking out a lot of her trauma on her child. So Serena has all the skills, but maybe it isn't really in her heart to do that. And then the third character, which is like a whole fodder conversation, is Brian. Brian is a Black boy who also wants to dance on pointe. And this was probably the hardest character to write and the one I felt the most scared to write, especially, in today's climate. If you're a middle-aged white woman writing about a Black 12-year-old who wants to dance on pointe, you're going to be, I just knew that I would be up against a lot there. But I also felt like if I didn't write him, who was going to write him? He's never going to appear in a book. And especially where I work at PNB, within the dance community, PNB has really been on the forefront of inclusion and really allowing dancers to do things that they haven't done in the past. We have non-binary dancers in the company who perform on pointe. And it just felt super important to include him. He's a him in this book. And Brian's journey is really it has nothing to do with skin color or pointe shoes or anything like that, but it's really about learning to have the courage to be who you are inside, even if the outside world does not see you the way that you see yourself. And that's sort of Brian's journey. I tried really hard to get that character right. It was very important to me. So anyway, all of those kids have a lesson to learn. Lauren needs to learn that she has to work if she wants to achieve something. If she wants to achieve excellence, hard work is there. Like you can't just walk in and, that's a big coming of age lesson. Brian learns that he can be himself. And then Serena learns that she also can be herself and she doesn't have to be what her parents expect or dictate her to be. So that's kind of their story. It's not like a complex story, but for 12-year-olds, I think it's a pretty big coming of age realization. And then the other thing I want to show you is that this book is illustrated. I don't know if you looked through it.
Yeah.
But I had this wonderful, it was very important to me, that it was illustrated because dance is so visual. I should have probably
beautiful.
marked.
Here, like I'm holding one up. But
good. You have one up.
Yeah, it's
there
gorgeous.
they are at the dance store.
Gorgeous. Yeah.
So Jill Cecil and I actually danced together as kids, but we didn't really know each other as kids. But because dance is so visual. Okay, so here's Brian with his pointe shoes.
Oh.
And we actually, the way that we did these illustrations, here's one of the three kids in front of the Space Needle.
This one.
Yes.
Making it look easy as this dancer sails through the air in a
that's
complete and total split. Is that even possible?
It is because, so the story behind the illustrations that's super cool is that there is a woman, Jenny Barlow, in Salt Lake City. So Jill and I both grew up in Salt Lake City.
Okay.
My dad was the only rabbi in the state for almost 20 years. That's a whole other storyline.
Oh my gosh.
But so that dance community is very small. We all knew each other as kids. And there's this wonderful woman who went on and founded her own ballet school that I danced with. And so we reached out to her and asked, could we come and photograph the students? So we had something to illustrate off of. And there was one crazy weekend where I flew to Utah. Jill and I went to the studio and these students actually acted out the story of Lauren in the Limelight and we photographed it. And then in a perfect world, there would have been 50 illustrations, but we had these wonderful kids who were so excited that's when I knew the book kind of had to be because all these kids were like, this is our story. Like, tell our story.
Oh, that's amazing.
So anyway, yes. So that image that you held up is actually taken off a photograph of real kids doing it. And I was very inspired by those kids. I went home and wrote another draft of the book. That's really, the character of Brian really evolved because of Eli, the kid who was Brian at the photo shoot. It really just helped me see those characters super clearly.
Wow. So I've been hearing, because, I'm actually trying to sell a middle grade novel right now.
Oh yeah, we can talk about that.
I've heard, I keep hearing how this market for middle grade fiction is so hard and it's like collapsing, in this dire state. Tell me about how you got the book published and your journey to that. Did you hear things like that? How did you persevere? Okay. Because here you have this absolutely beautiful package. It's, for those listening, the book is like, it's a hardcover, paper over board, glossy, and it looks gorgeous. It's a beautiful package. So
thank you.
Talk about that.
Okay, so we can talk about that. So actually, especially because I know this is a podcast for readers, but I know a lot of writers listen to it too. And it's very much surrounded in a lot of love from the writing community. I published this book.
Yourself?
I
Wow.
started my own publishing house. This is why I think I reached out to you like years ago and said, do you ever have time for a 15-minute mentorship call?
I am so sorry. I did not know that. It's not on your website. I didn't remember that you said that. I feel terrible.
No, I am not public about that.
Okay.
Because
I'm like, did I miss something big? Oh my goodness.
No, you did not. I mean, okay, so the other thing to know about my background is, yes, I danced, I trained at School of American Ballet. I danced with Miami City Ballet, but then I had a 10-year gap where I was out of the ballet industry and I went to college. I went to Stanford and then I worked in book publishing.
I did read that. Yes, I saw that.
Okay, so my first internship was with Alice Mayhew, which I don't know if people know who she is, but she was like the heavy-hitting nonfiction editor at Simon & Schuster for decades. And I, recopied her Rolodex. I mean, I was a fly on the wall in her office for a long time. And then I worked at Hyperion with some of our other mutual friends. Will Schwalbe was my boss at one time. And I have been very fortunate to be in the room with the people that do the big things. And so I sort of felt like I'd spent decades of my life preparing. When I finally reached the moment where I was like, well, nobody's going to do this for me. I better do it myself.
Mm-hmm.
I went, oh my gosh, I spent the last 30 years preparing for this without knowing that I was preparing for it. And during that time where I was working in book publishing, when I originally moved to New York, it was because I was writing that book, Girl in Motion. Because when I left ballet, any professional dancer leaves ballet, it's like this crack of your identity where you're just like, who am I? What am I doing? So the way I dealt with it was I wrote about it. And so I had in my mind, I was going to write this book. And when I was in New York, I actually had an agent who, at the time, she and I were just young assistants going and getting drinks, in New York, but she's now one of the biggest agents in the industry.
Ooh.
Fabulous. And so she tried to sell, the first 2 books, actually, she tried to sell them. So this is in 2005. And it was right when Twilight was big. And we kept hearing ballet is too niche and it's too sweet. And I'll be very frank, I didn't really know how to write a novel. I mean, I just poured my guts on the page. I was 26. So there was room for improvement in those books. So anyway, we spent a year trying to sell them. We could not sell them. So I put them in a drawer. I ended up moving to Seattle to work on the Amazon Books team.
I saw that too. You worked for the Amazon Book Review before they did a live blogging. Yes, I read that.
Yes. No, I used to blog for them when it was omnivoracious.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. I mean, I sort of was a fly on the wall everywhere. I've done publishing house, Amazon, bookstore. I've worked for Island Books forever. It's in my DNA,
Yes.
all this stuff. And so anyway, put those away. When I met my husband and we got engaged, it was right when Create Space started at Amazon and I was working there. So my husband pulled those books out of the drawer and he's like, well, let's just put them up there. You know how to do it. And, I think it's shifted a lot since 2007, but there's a stigma around self-publishing, right? And I had been up in the most elite rooms at Simon Schuster and Hyperion going, oh, they're self-published. We were turning people down left and right. So to me, that just felt like I felt ashamed at the idea of doing that at that time. But, when you have someone who loves you and believes in you, it kind of changes the game in a huge, huge way. So anyway, he talked me into doing it. We self-published those books in the most, they're not designed. They were not designed. These are the new editions, by the way. They were not designed. They're edited by me. And we just uploaded them and published them. And Zibby, those books sold over 10,000 copies.
What? That's amazing. Good for you.
Nuts?
Good for you. That's amazing.
Okay, so I have any message to give anyone, it's that if you know who you're writing to and you know your audience, the publishing industry is just a big gatekeeper. Because honestly, when we're writing for readers. We're not writing for executives who are making business decisions. And so some of that was because I'd been in the ballet industry for so long and there wasn't even really social media then, but I would put it on Facebook and I had danced in so many places that I just knew people in all those places and I'd been teaching. So it was total word of mouth. And those books, they're not great. We're no competitors. There's just nothing on the shelf next to them. And there also aren't a lot of former dancers who are writing, at least not at former professional dancers, you could line us up in a short row. And so anyway, those books went away. I went on, I had 4 kids. I did a lot of other things and then started writing it again. So sorry, now I need to get through my story. But after queering Lauren in the Limelight for 2 years, I was like, okay, this time I'm going to get a real, we're going to start over. I'm going to do this the right way. I'm older. I know what I'm doing. I know the writing is better. Kept hearing the same no, no, no. And then I had this moment where I read this article about a woman who went viral on TikTok and got her book deal. It's like a YA book. So I was getting really creative at that point. I was like, okay, I'm just going to make a book trailer and see if I can get it to go viral. So I made a book trailer, and then I know people in the ballet world in like every place. So I had a lot of my ballet friends who have big platforms. I asked them, will you post the trailer? So the trailer went to maybe 10 to 15,000 people. It wasn't huge, but I had a retired agent who knows the ballet industry contacted me and said he wanted to work with me on the manuscript. So we actually did a rewrite. So I had a lot more help that someone else believed in it. And then the other thing that came of that, this is a very strange story, and social media is like a whole other subject. But, I've taught adult students forever, for 13 years here in Seattle. So there's a big community of adult dancers who come and take my class. And I know them so well. It's a really wonderful community, but we don't always know who we are outside of our leotards. And at this time, I had this one student who has been in my class forever who came to me and said, I saw your book trailer and I have a really big following on Instagram. Let me help you build your Instagram. And I, of course, was like, before this, my husband and I were very private. Like, it just was the most awkward sounding thing ever. But she was like, you have this huge community of students who has been in your adult class forever. She's like, let me just ask you questions about what we do in ballet class. So I don't know if I think we're friends on Instagram. You probably don't even read, but I do these videos that are, hey, Miriam, where's your foot in tendu? And these videos went viral. Like the first 4 videos went like to over 500,000 people.
Oh my gosh. Good for you.
So at that point I went, and I'd heard enough know about the book, but I had in my mind, I knew how I could reach the readers because of the ballet community. I knew like I had help doing the social media aspect of it. And my husband came to me and he said, I am so tired of you hearing people tell you you're not good enough. This had been like years. And I think I queried like 300 agents.
Wow.
Like, I will just say it.
Yeah.
I just knew this project needed to be, I knew the reader. I was like up in front of the reader.
Yep.
But there was this big industry in the way.
Yeah. You didn't even see them.
Well, so I just said, okay, sorry. And so I started Rhododendron Press. I hired my own packager. I had my illustrator. I hired her. We said, I'm not buying a new car. I invested in it like it was my business, just like you. And here we are. And now we've got these new editions of the old books, which that's a whole other thing. I went and revised them and brought them up to snuff. And now I have 3 titles, and I did them in the way that I wanted them to be. I didn't have anyone telling me what the cover should look like, that it needed to be more salacious, or it needed to be something that the world thinks the ballet industry is, which it is not, or I don't want it to be seen as. And so, yeah, so that's my story. Sorry, that was a lot of talking.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And how are you distributing it?
Through Ingram and through Amazon. Yep. And, I was very fortunate that I've been really involved in the indie bookstore scene here for a long time. I've worked for Island Books forever. I did their blog and newsletter, and I hosted their open book club. So they were super supportive of me. And I just, I've spent most of my life just supporting other artists. I really believe in it. It's very meaningful to me. I'm actually a lot more comfortable doing the kind of thing you're doing than being the author. But that energy of wanting to support and love others, like, it comes back to you. And the best part of this has just been finding the community. I just feel like my community has grown and reconnecting. I've done this tour where I basically went to all the places where I lived and danced, and just all those old connections coming back, and it has been really, really meaningful. And to see young dance students reading the book and feeling like they could talk to me, that I wasn't this scary faculty member at this exclusive ballet school. It really gave me hope for like what the ballet world might be for my kids, or what, I'm only one person, but if I don't show up, who's going to show up and make it better? So.
Are you going to publish other people's books, or you're just going to stick with your own books, or do you have a vision for it?
Okay, so that's a good question. I've gotten that at a couple events. I don't know. That's the full-on answer, is that I really don't know. I'm working on an adult novel. I would like to have more time to write. I didn't set out to be a publisher. I really wanted that time. And also I have 4 young kids and my husband works, and I also have a part-time job. that I love, the teaching. So I don't really know. I feel like every few years of my life, I've totally reinvented what the heck I'm doing. So I'm not opposed to it. I think it would have to be a book I felt as passionately about as I did about mine.
Yep.
But it isn't like my life aspiration to be a publisher. Like I'm glad I have the framework for it, but I don't know. That's my short answer.
Okay, that's good.
I might.
We'll see. We'll stay tuned. Well, I love it. I love your whole story. I'm just, I'm so glad that our paths connected. I know this is still a podcast, but
no. But
I was in Seattle last year, or 2 years ago. Anyway, I never went to Mercer Island, but I went to Bainbridge Island like twice in 2 days, which was crazy. But anyway, hopefully we can at some point meet in real life, and let's please stay in touch because all the stuff you're doing is very cool. And I love your, the dance community. All these micro communities are so important. I mean, that is producing content that a particular group of people love is the most important thing there is, right? And who better to know that than the person in it? I don't know. If you come to New York, by the way, I just saw this amazing play called How to Dance in Ohio. You have to go see it.
Oh, interesting.
And one of the characters is someone who had been at Juilliard and got injured. She's like anyway, I think you would really, it would.
Darn, I was in New York. I had an event at the Capizio flagship store.
Oh my gosh, what a good idea.
It was amazing. Well, that was the kind of thing where if you're an indie publisher, the bookstores, there's a line out the door. I could not get an event. So on a whim, I called up the Capizio store and I talked to the manager and said, I know this is a crazy idea, but would you be willing to? And they were like, oh, it has to go through corporate. That'll never happen, but I'll ask. This wonderful manager. And I forgot about it. I was like, oh, that'll never happen. 2 months later, she called and said, can you be here in 2 weeks? So I was just in New York. I took the whole family.
Oh, no. Okay. Next time.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I will be there again. I love New York. So anyway.
Well, congratulations on Lauren in the Limelight. This is such an inspiring story, both the story and the lessons therein, but also the backstory. So you get it. It's like a 2-for-1 deal. Very cool.
Yay.
All right.
All right. Well, it's such a pleasure to meet you. And thank you for everything. I mean, even just to support, to support an indie author like me, it just shows what a big heart you have, I really treasure people who are not gatekeepers, but uplifters of others. And I think that is something so special that you do and you're really appreciated. So people don't tell you that enough because you spend so much time appreciating other people, but we really appreciate you. So thank you, Zibby.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Well, have a great day, Miriam.
You too. Nice to meet you.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.